Hello. Okay, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Now, I only watched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse the other night. I watched it the night before going to see Across the Spider-Verse. And I have to say, I was really impressed by that film. I love the animation. I love the creativity and just sort of just the way the story was told. I felt like it was very focused, and for a 2-hour movie, it was very breezy. But I feel like I've also got to mention, when it comes to the character Spider-Man, I'm not really a massive fan of the character. I was first introduced to the character with the Sam Raimi movies, and my favourite Spider-Man movie is Spider-Man 2. But yeah, when it comes to the character, I've never delved into the comics, so I'm not that... my knowledge isn't really there with all of the characters and the history of the character Peter Parker and Miles Morales and all of that. So as I previously mentioned, I'd only just watched this week the first movie, Into the Spider-Verse, and I was really impressed by it. And I just loved the imagination and the animation and just how that story was brought together. And I felt like with the second movie, they amped everything up. They pushed everything to 11. And you know what? I loved it. It is a hell of a lot more chaotic when it comes to the action scenes, but there is just so much. It's just, this movie was just a visual treat, a treat for the eyes and the senses. There was just so much going on within sort of the frame of whatever moment it is you're watching, whether it be a quiet, sort of more somber character moment or an action scene. There is just so much to take in, and I loved it so much. I did feel like at times it was hard to keep up with what was going on because there's so much, and especially during some of the action scenes, it can get quite chaotic, and there's so much imagination going on while you're watching these scenes. You can feel the love and the passion with the team, the creators, the directors and the writers that brought this story together, and you could just feel that love. And at times, in the most, this is, a positive from myself, but it was almost like a sensory overload at times. Now, Across the Spider-Verse, the sequel, this is a 2-hour and 20 movie, whereas the first one was just under 2 hours. And that first movie was a hell of a lot more breezy and focused, and just, it didn't feel like a 2-hour movie. Watching the sequel, watching this second movie straight after, you can kind of really feel it. This is a much slower experience, and that's not a negative from me. What they do with Across the Spider-Verse is really flesh out and dig into these characters and these stories, and really add a lot more emotional depth to their journeys and just the story overall. So it kind of takes what made that first one so great and improves on it, which, I'll be honest with you, after watching that first one, I didn't think it was possible. But they achieved that with the sequel. Everything that they managed to achieve in the first one, they replicate, but they improve on it. And those little sort of minor gripes that I did have with the first one, they fix here with the sequel. And that is those emotional beats, those character's journey, and I just added a little bit more emotional depth. So even though this is a slightly longer movie, by 20 minutes, I feel like it benefits as a result of that. For some, it may be a little bit too slow, but I feel like it becomes a much more emotional journey as a result. Now, there's Easter eggs galore in this movie, and I loved it. But it was also, it felt right. It didn't feel out of place. It didn't feel like these Easter eggs and these cameos were forced in. It just felt right. It felt natural. And I'm not going to give any spoilers. This is a spoiler-free review, so I'm not going to say what these Easter eggs and these cameos are. But I feel like there have been other Spider-Man movies that have done the same thing, or have attempted the same thing when it comes to certain cameos or characters from, getting characters from other universes into the film. And for me, those other movies...
Hello?
I felt like they relied too much on those cameos and those other characters coming in, and sort of like... the story kind of relied and hinged on those cameos and those Easter eggs, whereas with Across the Spider-Verse, it just fitted in and it just didn't take over the story. It felt right and it felt natural and not forced, and I just really liked how they handled those Easter eggs and those cameos and just how they kind of connected it to other movies. They did it right. It felt right. Visually, I mean, I have to keep on about the visuals because this is a beautiful movie. It's a visual treat for the senses and the eyes, and I just loved all the different styles and blends of animation, and I feel like the animation in the sequel Across the Universe was intensified, and there was a lot more going on in the animation. So for example, you'd have this character moment, a somber character moment for example, and you'd have these sort of brush strokes in the background, and the background would be moving and it would be changing, and it sort of expressed what these characters were going through emotionally just through the visuals. For me it did anyway, I felt, and I just loved that. It's like the entire movie had this kind of organic feel about it, and then it was just all alive, and it was almost like it was just telling the story through the visuals. Yes, you've got the characters doing their thing and saying their words, but you've also got the story being told through the beautiful visuals. And yeah, this is a stunning movie. It's one of the best animated movies I've seen in recent years, one of the best this year. I mean, along with Puss in Boots, because Puss in Boots was also a really damn good film, a bit of a surprise for me. And yeah, this was just a visually stunning movie that just immersed you into this very wild, emotional, but very human story. And I just loved the colour palette in this movie as well. It was a slightly darker tone compared to the first movie. There were a lot more ambers, blacks and reds being used. I personally call it the Empire Strikes Back colour palette, where I felt like in that particular movie there was a lot more blacks and dark blues and ambers and reds. And I just felt like it had a very similar tone to The Empire Strikes Back. Now, it's not the same story, but it just has that kind of similar darker tone, but it's also not too intense as well. I think the balance in the tone with, in regards to the humour and the more somber moments was just beautiful. And a lot of that is down to the very smart and clever writing and the fantastic humour as well. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of the Marvel humour, the MCU humour. In fact, to be honest with you, personally, I quite despise the MCU humour. But the humour in this was just clever. It was smart and it works. The comic timing, just the way the humour is delivered through the voice talent. Yeah, it was just an overall great immersive experience. This was a fantastic film. So yeah, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is a much more character-driven experience and a much more emotional sort of experience than the first one. Don't get me wrong, the characters are written great in that first movie. It's a great movie, that first one, but they just improve on everything in Across the Spider-Verse and really just flesh out those characters and sort of add a lot more depth to their journey. And that first movie is a great film, and I was sort of like, how are they going to improve on that? And they do. I think some people might find this one just a little bit too slow in places, but for me it's what I felt was lacking in that first film, and I was happy with it. It is 2 hours and 20 minutes, but it's such an immersive journey that you don't really feel it. It's a very mesmerising experience. You're just watching these visuals play out, and the music, the score is great. There is nothing really negative to say about it. You can feel the love, when it comes to from the writers, the directors. You can just feel the passion in this film that they have for these characters, and it's a very well made movie. It's up there with Puss in Boots this year in regards to animated movies. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and I will be giving Across the Spider-Verse a 10 out of 10. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Across the Spider-Verse. But what did you guys think? Please let me know in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. Did you agree with me? or disagree with me, let me know below. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to see future reviews from just some Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next review will be for The Boogeyman, which I'm about to see this evening, straight after filming this review. And then tomorrow, which is it was very short notice. I wasn't expecting to go to London tomorrow, but I will be catching The Flash 2 weeks before it comes out here in the UK. I managed to get some tickets for an advance screening, and I am so damn excited. I'm really looking forward to it because the man himself will be there. Michael Keaton is there'll be a Q&A session there with Michael Keaton. So yeah, I am really fucking hyped for that.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
So yeah, I'll be looking forward to sort of really sharing my thoughts with you on The Boogeyman and The Flash once I've seen it and when I can talk about it. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be seeing you guys soon.